We've got these stories and more on VA News this week.
VA reaches out to Native Americans.
A renowned VA transplant expert receives a top science award.
And VA goes red to reduce heart disease in women.
We'll be right back with more after this.
Hello, I'm Christina Cangelosi with the Veterans Benefits Administration.
And I'm Shane Sewell with the Consolidated Patient Account Center Program Management Office. Thanks for tuning in. Secretary Shinseki and other top VA officials attended the National Indian Health Board Annual Consumer Conference in Denver at the end of September. Officials from all VA administrations hosted a tribal consultation session to get input to enhance the delivery of services to American Indian and Alaska Native veterans. In workshops and meetings over 4 days, VA discussed with tribal leaders various topics, including the Native America Direct Loan Program and increasing tribal government involvement in the VA Indian Health Service work groups and their activities at national and local levels.
It is vital that we hear your voices and listen to your concerns on issues that affect veterans and their families. We've held a series of 4 tribal consultations this past year alone, and we intend to continue both formal and informal dialogue with tribal leaders to better understand, meet the needs of veterans and tribal communities. An aggressive outreach schedule to expand our relationships with the American Indian and Alaska Native governments is a top priority.
A lot of what we can do to improve how we serve veterans and tribal communities really starts with just sitting down across the table, having a cup of coffee with a tribal leader, with a veteran living in a tribal community, and basically say, what are some of the challenges you experience? What are some of the good news stories that you experience? How can we be smart about how we do business with tribes and reaching veterans and tribal communities? So I think it really starts with the relationship building, which builds the foundation of understanding, which makes our efforts more informed, more specific, and more relevant for veterans.
The VA is improving their relationships between Indian Health Service, Tribal Health, and the veterans, Indian veterans, as a result of the outreach that they're doing to the different communities. They're not just doing outreach to the tribal health facilities, they're doing outreach to the tribal communities themselves, they're doing outreach to the Indian veterans themselves.
I was able to see the work that was being done and the very sensitive nature of the staff and the physicians and all of them with regards to who I was as a Native. And so I felt like they were willing to listen and that the actual hospital was really working hard to become a lot more understanding of the types of services that needed to be delivered to Navajo people.
Working closely with tribal leaders and developing that rapport and consistently working with them. It's encouraging, and we're beginning to see more Native American veterans beginning to ask more questions, especially the spouses. What benefits are their husbands or they themselves entitled to? So that in itself is a success because none of that existed before.
A recent event in Greensboro, North Carolina, designated to assist homeless veterans, operates on the simple premise that those men and women fought to defend our streets, not to live on them. More than 200 homeless veterans from 12 North Carolina counties received health screenings, dental care, and other much-needed services on September 28th. Dozens of volunteers tended to the veterans at the 7th Annual Triad Homeless Veterans Stand-Down. Stand-downs are just one part of VA's effort on behalf of homeless veterans, an effort that has dramatically reduced the nation's homeless veteran population in the past 4 years.
Pioneering liver transplantation researcher and surgeon Thomas Starzl, formerly of the University of Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh VA Medical Center, recently received one of the top awards for science in the world.
A physician at numerous VA hospitals over a 50-year span, Dr. Starzl shares the Lasker DeBakey Clinical Medical Research Award for 2012 with fellow liver transplantation developer Roy Kahn of the University of Cambridge in England. Their work has restored life to thousands of patients diagnosed with end-stage liver disease.
The award from the Albert and Mary Lasker Foundation is also named for the late Michael E. DeBakey, the world-renowned heart transplant surgeon with VA for more than 50 years. Here is a video from the Lasker Foundation on the tremendous contributions of Doctors Starzl and Kahn.
Andrew was going to die, and I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't accept it. You know, I used to feel that I'm sure that something could make him better, you know.
Refusing to accept the inevitability of patients dying, Thomas Starzl and Roy Kahn envisioned the potentials of transplantation despite the skepticism of the medical community.
There was a period of hostility about the whole enterprise. I think there was a era of pessimism that lasted for a long time, a couple of decades.
Those words, "it can't be done," were imprinted in my memory.
In the late 1950s, Starzl's success transplanting livers in laboratory research animals fuels his belief that liver transplants are a clinical possibility.
I actually worked out the details pretty thoroughly by the end of 1959 in dogs. Still, there was no known way of preventing rejection at that time, so many people construed this as a kind of a frivolous technical exercise.
Investigating chemicals known to block immune responses to foreign proteins, Kahn experiments with 6-mercaptopurine, fortunately unaware of other research results.
Oh, he said, you know those 6-mercaptopurine experiments? He said, don't do them, it doesn't prolong skin grafts. I said, lucky I didn't speak to you earlier because it does seem to prolong kidney grafts. So that was really the beginning of chemical immunosuppression.
Roy's initial contribution in his work with immunosuppression of kidneys built the foundation for that interest in immunosuppression in general.
Despite modest advances, organ rejection continues to sabotage transplantation until Starzl and Kahn's research identifies important drugs that change the immune system.
The best way was to start with azathioprine and intervene with steroids only when rejection started.
Armed with this new insight on immunosuppression, Starzl initiates a pioneering kidney transplant program in Denver at the University of Colorado.
And basically showing that kidney transplantation had leapt from a very questionable experimental procedure to a legitimate clinical service. Albeit still a flawed one.
Using the dual immunosuppressive regimen he'd found successful with kidney transplantation, Starzl proceeds with a liver transplant program.
The first one was on the 1st of March, 1963, and the last 5 failures was in October of 1963. So we closed the program.
In 1967, Starzl reopens the Denver liver program, having improved both surgical procedures and strategies for using known drugs for immunosuppression.
We began to produce successful cases with survival exceeding 1 year.
Immunosuppression remains the ongoing problem, but it's not until the late 1970s that Kahn makes the long-awaited breakthrough.
And we thought we ought to do a clinical trial with cyclosporin. But Sandoz were very reluctant. They didn't want to get into immunosuppression. I went back and they said, because of all the fuss you have made, we'll let you do a small clinical trial.
Roy became aware of the drug cyclosporin, used it very quickly in animal models, showed it was an effective immunosuppression, and almost the same year used it in some humans.
With ongoing research, side effects are minimized through newly identified agents with improved results. Starzl introduces tacrolimus, and Kahn contributes rapamycin and Campath, continuing their quest, striving to better patient outcomes.
The purpose of the practicing physician is to gather all the information and try to understand what the big picture is. That is the power of research.
Public recognition finally proclaims the landmark success of these two scientist surgeons. But for Tom Starzl and Sir Roy, Their rewards are their patients and the many thousands alive today who had no option for life without a liver transplant.
The extent to which we succeeded vastly exceeded my expectations.
I knew I had to do it because it was the only thing that was going to keep me alive. I was one of the first 40 to ever be done. Dr. Starzl is my guardian angel.
I was diagnosed at 7 months and I was transplanted at 14 months. I wouldn't be here without you, so thank you so much. Thank you.
September 24th marked the official completion of the Consolidated Patient Account Center implementation, with the last VA Medical Center transitioning into the West CPAC, one of 7 consolidated centers that now perform VHA's revenue functions. VHA's Deputy Chief Business Officer for Revenue, Stephanie Martin, who has overseen the CPAC development, has joined us for a quick conversation. Welcome, Ms. Martin.
Well, thanks, Shane.
Stephanie, what has occurred over the past few years during the CPAC implementation of the CPAC program?
Well, Shane, I'm really pleased to let everyone know that over the last 4 years, we've worked very closely with our partners in the field to open 7 state-of-the-art business centers to perform core revenue cycle functions for VHA, everything from insurance verification through collection follow-up. We've hired 3,500 highly skilled staff to perform these functions, who are based both in the VA medical centers and at the Consolidated Patient Account Centers. And we've done this project 1 year earlier than was required by public law.
Oh, wow, that's terrific. Now, Stephanie, what does the completion of CPAC mean to VA as an organization?
Well, it means to VA as an organization that we're using industry-proven best practices in revenue cycle management. We believe this allows us to be the very best in business.
Okay, now you mentioned revenue cycle management. Stephanie, tell us basically how are the results of the CPAC model measured?
Well, we measure that based on performance metrics that are used in industry. So, for example, we've really improved our ability to collect on accounts that are aged over 90 days and to get our bills out more timely. This allows us to generate more revenue to provide treatment to veterans.
Okay, and how does CPAC impact our veterans, now that you mentioned veterans?
Well, much like our agency's commitment to excellence in clinical practice, excellence in business allows us to provide high-quality services to veterans who have served our country. We're very much committed to providing the very best to our veterans through our business practices.
Well, that's great. Stephanie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Shane.
Did you know 90% of all women have one or more risk factors for developing heart disease? With that in mind, VA and the American Heart Association teamed to sponsor a VA Goes Red Health Expo on September 27th. The event ran in conjunction with the Fresh Farm Farmers Market on Vermont Avenue in front of VA Central Office. There were healthy cooking demonstrations, fitness classes like this Zumba exhibition, health screenings, and CPR instruction. VA Undersecretary for Benefits Allison Hickey and American Heart Association President Dr. Donna Arnett spoke at the program.
I recently made the commitment to eat better, to exercise more, and because I want to be my very best every single day for those veterans, their family members, and their survivors, so that I can have a strong heart, a sharp mind, and stamina. And guess what? Since February, I've lost 65 pounds. There's a lot of you out there I've already talked to have said you're on that road too.
That's our show this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Sewell.
And I'm Christina Cangelosi. Have a great day and great rest of the week.